spruce pine. And it so happened that they were having a class on metal repousser, which is a French word meaning push and repush. So with this metal, it's a rather thin piece of sheet goods that you work on a soft surface. And you do the design, and then, for example, on the lettering here, I pushed on the backside, I pushed the metal, and then I turned it over, and on the other side, I refined the metal on the other side. And then it has you patina the metal with a chemical, and then put some kind of like a polyurethane on the metal to keep it from being damaged. And then you just glue it on there. Same thing with the halos. So Elijah and the sign for Jesus, which I'll pass this little halo around, and you can see what it looks like. You can always tell it's Jesus in an icon, because if you look at his halo, behind his head, there's a cross. So behind his head there will be a cross. Even little baby Jesus has a halo with a cross in the halo. And then these Greek letters mean I am who I am.
Is there a cross in your halo?
Yes, there is. Right there.
Yeah.
Another thing about this icon is that since it was a parish project, I wanted as many people as possible to work on it.
I did it.
Yeah.
I did it. I wrote.
You wrote on the edge.
Right.
And so
So did I.
people painted about an inch on the edge of the icon, all the way around. I took it, when it was almost finished, I took it up to the convent of the Sisters of the Transfiguration. And the sisters painted on the edge. It was so sweet. Then I like to take a picture of people as they are doing it. And so there is a book that I ended up with. And this has everything you need to know about this icon,
Oh my
including a CD.
Oh my goodness.
And in here, I'm going to leave this out for you to look at, but you will see people that you haven't seen in like 20 years. Also in here, I had them write down what they did on the icon and sign their name.
What was the year this was done?
Pardon me?
What was the year?
2005. The Feast of the Transfiguration
Right.
is August the 6th. So August the 6th, 2006, we had a celebration. And we processed with the icon down to the altar, and it was on the altar for the service. In an Orthodox church, they would have this on August the 6th, they would have this icon out on a stand so that when people came in the door, they could see the icon and they could venerate it. And that means they could kiss the icon, they could pray with it, they could caress it. And this icon has, it has a tongue oil on the surface, and that drank into the layers and it protects it. So you can caress this icon. It's up on the wall, it's kind of hard to kiss, but
How about the gold? Do you cover the gold with the,
I did not, no. I did not put anything on the gold because I've seen that done, and to me it takes away the glint, which I like. I like the glint of the gold. that is done on an icon is symbolic. You start with really dark colors, like this, and then gradually go lighter and lighter and lighter. And the very last thing you do is take a tiny brush and put white, pure white paint on it, and put it on the edge, on the outside edge of the eyes. Not in the pupil, not in the colored part, because these figures are on the other side of the veil. And in Orthodoxy, this is all happening right now in this icon. And these figures are looking out at you. So you'll notice that Jesus is looking straight out. This blue and green and dark blue around Jesus is called the mandorla. And it's like heaven opens. And that's where Jesus is. In the story of the icon, God spoke, and this cloud right here is God's voice coming down to James, John, and Peter. And another thing that's so interesting, well, there are lots of interesting things. These little twigs in an icon, they're usually really scruffy little branches. And so I think that you all know that my spiritual plant is the rhododendron. And so I painted rhododendrons because this icon is about this place. The mountains look like shingles on the mountainside. And that represents even the mountains bowing to God. It so happens that Blaine and I were fortunate enough to take a trip to the Holy Land. And the mountains, some of them are absolutely bare with rocks on them, almost like shingles. So this is somewhat authentic. And there are two places where they think the transfiguration took place. And we saw one way off in the distance, Mount Hermon, that had snow on it. I don't think that was the one. The other one was Mount Tabor, which was in between. It was on the way from Galilee to Jerusalem, and kind of a natural place for people to, well, they wouldn't gather. Next time you drive, when you go home tonight, and you go through Chimney Rock, and you see Chimney Rock Mountain. Okay, so you're in your car, you look up at the top of Chimney Rock Mountain. That is how high Mount Tabor is. In a level plain, and here's this mountain that looks about the same height as Chimney Rock. So when we were riding in the bus, I wanted to remember how tall that mountain was. So I looked up, and it's the same thing here. So if Jesus took with him his three best friends and they hiked up the mountain, think of Chimney Rock Mountain, that's how high it was.
Carolyn, did you do the faces, or do they have to be somehow, stylized like they were, so you couldn't give your impression of what those faces would be? How did you put those faces in?
I looked at the way faces were done in about 6 or 7 icons.
And then you repeated the look of that,
Yes, yeah. And icons, usually the faces have long noses and narrow lips because they can keep secrets. So I was after long noses. Now, questions?
As I recall, this was one of your earlier icons, wasn't it? You were just...
I had started in about the year 98. So I had done enough that I felt
Ready to
this
do
could
this
be
one,
done,
yeah.
yeah.
But you were yeah, I remember when you were just getting started, and, you know, it just opened up a whole world to you.
Really, yeah. And this went around to nursing homes and hospitals so that people could work on it. And our brand new bishop traced the image of Christ. And Mickey traced the image of Moses.
Father Hindle did James.
Elijah, I can't quite remember. So, but it's all in the book.
When you're saying tracing, so there are patterns? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
You take the.
So I have all of my tracing.
Rubbing,
Thank
right,
you.
yeah.
And here is the original work for the mellow, which is called an oklad, O-K-L-A-D. So I spent, I don't know, probably 2 weeks drawing this. Better to take your time when you can erase it than when you can't. Also, another important feature of the Transfiguration icon is that up here in this corner, you see Jesus and the 3 disciples going up the mountain. On this side, you see them going down the mountain because you cannot stay on top of the mountain. You've got to go down and do God's work. And that is the next story that comes after the Transfiguration story, is out there doing God's work. So if you'd like, take a little bit of time to look through the book and see some familiar faces. And
What are those white things on this, Mark? They look like.
Spirit of God.
A little swirly.
oh, the
Swirly thing.
swirly things, that is God speaking through a cloud.
Oh, okay.
Because there was a cloud that came down over the 3 disciples.
Those quarters,
Those swirly, curly keys.
Yeah, they're little curly cues.
oh, yes.
That's the voice of God.
Okay.
And so on the icon, it says, because I think it's important to know what this is about. Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John and led them up a high mountain. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light. A voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, whom I love. Listen to him." And then on the back, it says, "Written to the glory of God in honor of the centennial of the Church of the Transfiguration, Bat Cave, North Carolina, August 6, 2006, by the hand of Verlin, with the assistance of parishioners, friends, and the Sisters of the Transfiguration." And I think Hayward has a question. You remember you were telling me that you had a question?
What was it about now?
That's the question.
That was his question. What's my question?
That's a very large icon.
Yes, it is.
What was that, 240 hours?
Yes, he wanted to know, how long did that take you?
Oh,
So
yeah.
here's the side story. Blaine is Mr. Numbers guy, he likes to know the numbers of things. And so I kept track of my time. And that was time writing the icon.
I did.
And it's on here, it's on here, like 4 or 5 pages. And I think it took like 200 hours. And that was time on task. Working in silence,
Wow.
loved it. So there's a lot of prayer, there have been at least 80 hands who have worked on this.
Do you have anything set time you do it, or you just do a little bit and walk off and touch base, then you come back?
No, it would be like 8 hours a day. Or maybe working into the night. Well, I would invite you to come up and
Very good. Thank you so much.
Share with folks here who may or may have not been to Cursillo, how you gave everybody that came through Cursillo an opportunity to work on an icon. I mean, it was just absolutely magical.
if this is something that you think you would like to try, I would suggest signing up for the icon class out at Canuga. That is, usually it is in February. And you can go out there and not take a thing. You don't need any supplies. Everything is supplied to you. And it is written in egg tempera, which I think is important. There is another class that is, the teacher uses acrylic paint. And they're very nice icons that are done with acrylic paint. But